So for people listening, it might be seem like, okay, David is just sort of like passing out.
Mm.
And, but when I was looking at you, you know, I've never seen you like that where, to me, just in the middle of nowhere, in a city, I
Yeah,
don't know how
who
to
knows
get you
where we were
help.
at. Yeah.
I was really afraid, like, oh my gosh, you could really be in trouble.
Mhm.
I just had no idea, like, what was going on because you were in and out of consciousness, and your gaze, um, I imagine, like, are you having a heart attack or,
Yeah. Yeah, well, yeah, I remember 'cause it was, I was kinda sitting like that, just kinda, like, bracing myself, but then at one point, I felt myself, going lower and lower and lower, and I was just, like, almost like there was a magnet between me and I remember that sense of, like, "What?" It's like something's pushing me, and there was this weird kinda, like, tingle all over my arms from probably losing the oxygen, and then suddenly, it was like, "Hey, we gotta go." And Kenneth and yourself, I
Kenneth was
remember,
with us,
yeah, I
yeah.
remember kind of like helping me up, and they're like, can you walk, can you walk? And I was like, yeah, I can walk, and not nearly that energetic, by the way. It
You're
was more like
barely
yeah.
walking.
And
Yeah.
you helped me, and I remember sitting in the car, kind of shuffling in a little side kind of thing like that, helped me get up in there. And then that's it. I don't remember much from there until we got to the clinic. I couldn't even tell you how far away it was. I couldn't tell you which direction we went. I can't tell you anything about that trip at all, actually. I
Yeah.
just remember at one point you grabbed my shoulder and you were like, David, hey, and I was like, oh, and for whatever reason your hand moved. And I remember catching your hand and then looking back up your eyes and still like not really knowing much of anything, still being dazed. And they like helped me into the clinic, and there was this little tiny, um, it had to have been from like 1980s wheelchair. I don't even know where they got it
Yeah,
from.
it was a small wheelchair,
Yeah,
and I was saying to them, he's not even gonna fit in there, and they're like,
yeah.
no, put him in the wheelchair. I'm like,
Yeah, I'm like,
are you
okay,
serious?
yeah.
So we
And I
put
remember sitting, and then like I had to do like this little shimmy to even get into the wheelchair, and they wheeled me out up in there. And I remember that. I remember pushing, and like obviously I'm a big guy, so there's like three guys heaving me up the ramp and pushing
barely
me,
got you
and
up the
yeah,
ramp.
barely
Yeah,
got me up there. And when we say clinic, we should say two rooms, the front room and the back room, and just all the stone and dust and dirt and everything in that first room. And I remember going through there, and then there were six beds, and funny enough, it looked very much like army hospital beds, just
hmm
steel bars at the bottom, some little camp kind of mattress and barely a pillow. And they're like, here, take your, you like, I'm like, okay. And they're like, yeah, lay down, lay down. I'm like, okay. And so I laid down there, and I was still like half in, half out. I wasn't really actually like super aware. I remember them asking me some questions, my age and something else. And then at one point, all of a sudden, like it was just like clear. And I was like, oh, hey, Rich. And I was
yeah,
back. And
yeah. Probably the most disturbing part of that, when anybody's uh, in trouble, like your face was gray.
mm,
But then there was a part where everything returned to normal, and I kept this. I'll give this to you today. This is the Ahmadiyya Muslim Clinic, and
ah,
that's where we went.
wow, cool.
And
Thanks.
Kenneth, at some point turned to me in the ar and said, "Should we take him to the hospital?" I'm like, "Yes, let's go."
Yeah.
And we got there, and there's things about everywhere that you go, and one of them is like poor lighting. There's a lot of sand on the
Yeah.
floor,
Yeah.
and it's really nothing like you see in the
Yeah.
states.
Nothing like it.
But it was like an old army hospital,
Yeah.
maybe is what I would say, from 1940,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
For
that's what it
sure.
looked
Yeah,
like.
it was a community room. It was just there was no single room. Yeah, it was like a ward. Yeah.
Yeah, and they came in, and there was a nurse there, and just being half the world away, I'm like, "Oh my gosh, is this gonna be right?"
Mm,
And the nurses came in and put an IV in you.
yeah.
They took your blood pressure, and all of a sudden I started to notice that as far as I know, they were following all the standards.
Yeah.
You
They did.
know,
They had an
that
exact protocol.
the
Yeah.
medical profession was operating the way it was designed,
Mm,
the way it was standardized to be.
yeah.
And that somebody was and kind of told us before we go in here, this is the international clinic. This
Yeah,
is where
yeah.
you
Th
go.
This is where yeah, yeah, that's right, I remember that
And I'm just
after the fact.
I'm afraid because of all what's going on. I doubted it
Mm,
until I started to see those things. And just on your behalf, and you do the same for me. I'm watching everything very
mm,
closely
mhm,
because if it wasn't right, I was going to stop it.
right, yeah.
But
Yeah, I remember you asking me, like, "Is that okay? They're gonna put an IV in you?" I was like, "Yeah, it's fine, I need the fluids," you know?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, but
Appreciate that, watching out, I do remember watching out for me.
yeah, and ultimately they tell us that you were dehydrated.
Yeah,
You know,
extremely dehydrated,
and
yeah.
they put an IV in you. They checked for the heart. They did an EKG.
Mhm.
They took your blood pressure.
Yeah.
They did a blood test.
Well, the thing about that EKG too, it wasn't even like, when we do the couple of patches or how many ever, and there are those big white stickers. I remember they had like clips, and they remind me of potato chip bag clips.
They were
But
like that though,
yeah,
weren't they?
they put a clip on each wrist, they put a clip on each ankle, and I'm like, wait, they said they were going to do an EKG. Like, what is this? But it was that old of technology. I mean, it functioned, and then it's like just like only in movies I've ever seen. They wait a couple of seconds. They tell me to be quiet, don't talk, and then it spits out the paper, and it's like, and all the paper, and there's the EKG printed out. And I was like, whoa, my goodness, like
Yeah,
that's incredible.
yeah. So like within a span of 30 minutes, the color had returned to your face. You were stable, and within another hour, we were walking out of there.
Yeah,
And I was thankful to God, that He brought us to a place that had
yeah,
standards.
yeah.
You
You
know,
and me both.
and that is, that's what we do here.
Yeah, yeah,
That mental health has to have standards too.
yeah,
We're a faith-based mental health organization that guarantees that this standard is going to be delivered to
yeah.
people.